Recently, I've been revisiting the crazy world of Street Fighter X Tekken and was once again blown away by its unique character roster. So many different character archetypes are found here, and you'll never know who will pop up next in your journey to uncover the truth behind the mysterious Pandora. Especially when it's someone who seemingly joined the fight from out of nowhere.
Warning! Follow me.
Do we have to take them alive?
It's preferable, but accidents do happen.
You dare disappoint me? You die.
So you're the one standing in my way.
Because he doesn't originate from Street Fighter or Tekken, Cole McGrath sticks out like a sore thumb, and I don't blame you if an infinite number of questions begin rushing through your mind. In a game with colourful fighters who often throw conventional character design out the window, how did such a normal-looking man stumble into Yoshimitsu, or Poison, or twice-divorced Mega Man? Well, that's what we're here to find out, but before we go any further, I have to make some things clear. As I'm recording footage off the PC version of Street Fighter X Tekken, some of Cole's attacks don't render properly. I'll elaborate as to why this is later on, so stay tuned. Also, because Cole never saw any tournament play due to being banned, high-quality video resources and specific gameplay information can be really challenging to find, but the SuperComboWiki website is awesome enough to include Cole's frame data and attack properties, so a big shout out goes to them for including these details. Without further ado, let's crank up the juice and figure out all there is to know about Street Fighter X Tekken's depiction of Cole McGrath.
Say goodnight. When you learn how to fight, call me.
Before we cover the specifics of Cole's gameplay in the context of a fighting game, I feel it necessary to introduce him to those who may not be familiar with his series of origin. It hasn't gotten a new game in over a decade after all, and as Cole wasn't even in this one, this means that his last dedicated video game came out almost 15 years ago. First appearing as the protagonist of Sucker Punch's infamous series, Cole McGrath, a bike messenger, received electric superpowers after being caught in the middle of a giant explosion. This disaster led to the deaths of several people, the partial destruction of Empire City, and a complete change in Cole's life. After making a miraculous recovery, Cole learns how to control his powers with the support of his friend Zeke and partner Trish, although it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. An unknown figure known only as the Voice of Survival begins to broadcast pirate radio frequencies, where he blames Cole for the city's destruction. Over time, citizens grow paranoid over Cole and his powers, and they start to blame him for this great tragedy. That's the gist of Cole's backstory, and if you'd like to learn more about how the narrative unfolds, I'd highly recommend playing Infamous yourself, it's good fun. A core component of Infamous's gameplay involves the karma system, directly tying into Cole's behavior during certain situations. For example, if the player performs heroic acts of sacrifice and forgiveness, Cole's electricity will become blue, but if you act selfishly and only care about possessing uncontrollable power, it will become red. In retrospect, the morality system may seem like a product of its time, but it does provide players with unique ways to interact with the game world, as well as providing replayability for subsequent playthroughs. As Street Fighter X Tekken was in development during Infamous 2's 2011 launch, the timing lines up nicely for Cole to make an appearance, with a similar phenomenon involving Reboot Dante appearing in PlayStation All-Stars, but that still doesn't explain how Cole made it into a Capcom fighting game. At this point, I put on my detective cap, and after doing some digging, I found a Eurogamer interview with former Street Fighter producer Yoshinori Ono about how all things Cole came to life, as well as a Silicon Era article with former Capcom community manager Seth Killian, so let's go in order to avoid being overwhelmed. In Ono's account, he claims that Capcom and Sony engaged in talks involving potential ways to link the PS Vita and PS3 versions of the game together, but over time, things started to get a bit wild. The biggest idea both companies had was to include a PlayStation-exclusive character for X Tekken, and as Cole's powers were deemed appropriate for both the Street Fighter and Tekken universes, he was a no-brainer. Perhaps the most interesting part of this story is when Ono claims Cole's new weapons in Infamous 2 might make him a bit unfair for a game like Street Fighter, hinting that Cole was supposed to fight barehanded, much like how he did in the first Infamous. Seth Killian's account lines up almost identically with Ono, although he does add that Capcom were particularly interested in all of Cole's potential gameplay possibilities. At first I thought this would be all and we could all move on, but then I stumbled across an interview with Ono on Sony's website where he goes into more detail. I had been talking to SCE about perhaps getting Cole into one of our games because he seems well suited to a fighting game. He's got all of these cool moves, and it just so happened that, almost simultaneously, Sucker Punch was also wanting to do some sort of tie-in with Street Fighter, so it was a perfect storm. It was almost exactly 50-50. Here's a little bit of behind the scenes info for you. Infamous 2 was still in development, and we didn't have a lot of visibility into it, so our original version of Cole was mostly based on his appearance in the first Infamous. Then we started talking to Sucker Punch, and they showed us Infamous 2, and we said, oh crap, he uses weapons now, we don't have any weapons. So we went back to the drawing board to make his moves more familiar to Infamous 2 players. As proof of Capcom and Sony's bond, the game's PS Vita port was featured during E3 2011 during Sony's panel, with Ono himself coming out on stage to announce Cole's inclusion. Real-time gameplay was also demonstrated, although you can tell that the handheld is having frame rate issues, so I doubt excitement would have been high. A collaboration between Street Fighter, Tekken, and Infamous of all series seems like it would only exist in one of Blanca's fever dreams, so you would expect both the gaming press and fans to be assaulting Capcom with follow-up questions, but this never came to fruition. Articles written about Cole's spot on the character roster often received little to no engagement from forum users, and I believe that this is due to the lack of crossover between the FGC and Infamous fans. Get it? Crossover? As for what I said before about playing the PC version of Street Fighter X Tekken, Cole isn't supposed to be here. This makes sense, as his inclusion was specifically for the PS3 and Vita versions, but thanks to the hard work of modders, Cole is now fully playable on PC. Because of this, many of his VFX fail to render properly, as well as certain animations having major issues. However, these don't affect gameplay, so we're still going to be able to get the full scoop. Also, as Cole has no story presence in the universe of Street Fighter X Tekken, the PS3 and Vita prevent you from using him in arcade mode, but since we're using the power of mods, nothing can stop us. It's very minor, but Cole actually has unused victory text that can be viewed this way, and I'm not sure why this was blocked off in the PlayStation versions. Anyway, I think you get the point by now, so let's not waste any more time and dive deep into Cole's move list. Despite having literal superpowers, you would think that Cole would have some incredible normals, but these are anything but. His standing normals come in two flavors. Either they're slow but have good range, or they're not as slow but they have no range. Light punch and light kick are as fast as buttons, although these are slower than many other characters' lights, so you have to be careful when pressuring the opponent. Medium punch is alright for poking and hit confirms, although most versions of his Rekka will whiff from this range, and his heavy punch has less range than you would expect. It also has a lot of startup and recovery frames, so accidentally whiffing it is a death sentence. Cole's kicks aren't much better, as although they have decent range, none of them can be special cancelled, with the exception of close medium kick. If you're trying to poke the enemy to death with Cole's kicks, you'll find that they don't hit very hard, making them more annoying than threatening. For such a mediocre normal, I find it bewildering that medium kick is both slow to start up and minus on block. Heavy kick is also unsafe on block, so if the enemy has a 3-frame punish, Cole is screwed. His crouching buttons also have slow startup and average range, so nothing truly good can be found here either. Perhaps the worst instance is his crouching medium kick, as if you use it to hit confirm into a Rekka, grenade, or shockwave during neutral, it will always whiff. His sweep has decent ground coverage, but it does low damage and is really unsafe on block. If we now take to the skies, we find that Cole's jumping normals are also very mediocre. Jumping light kick looks like it's a cross-up, but it sadly isn't, meaning medium kick has to be used here. This sounds okay, but it lacks any sort of unique qualities that could help set it apart from other cross-up buttons. His jumping heavies are solid combo starter tools, but they also suffer from lengthy startup frames, so there's really no way for Cole to be threatening in the air. As far as I can tell, there's also no way for him to convert an air-to-air into meaningful damage, which promotes Cole as a strictly grounded type of character. Luckily, Cole has some command normals, and they come in the form of an overhead that ground bounces on counter hit and a forward moving low. The slide has a heavy punch follow-up, but unfortunately this isn't a natural combo, and it can be up to -20 if you do it at the wrong time, so you don't want to throw this out with reckless abandon. To recap now, Cole's normals are slow and they don't hit very hard, but they do have average reach, which means they won't be too bad when in the mid-range. Okay, now that we have all the boring stuff out of the way, let's move on to his special moves. Depending on its strength, Amp Combo can end in either a soft knockdown, hard knockdown, or a ground bounce, and the EX version is invincible on startup. This is Cole's primary hit confirm and combo tool, although we know from earlier that it struggles to connect from a distance. Only throwing out the first hit will make it safe, as every follow-up from every strength makes Cole punishable, so you have to exercise patience when attempting to use the Rekka. Thunder Drop is Cole's way of combining aerial movement with a hitbox, although it can only harm opponents who are on the ground. The regular version startup are throw and projectile invincible, with the EX version being fully invincible here, as well as tracking to the opponent's position. You might think that a move like this would be ultra unsafe if blocked, but it's actually 0 on block, meaning Cole never has to worry about being at a disadvantage, and if it hits, you can score a combo. The only major drawback is its reactable startup, as just about every character can easily avoid and punish its prolonged recovery. In my view, Shock Grenade is one of his best special moves, as although it looks really simple, it's great at forcing the enemy to scramble. The EX version throws out 2 grenades, and the distance between them allows for otherwise impossible links on grounded enemies. Grenades can be thrown at different speeds to cover unique angles, and it's especially strong against characters who rely on grounded movement to reach you. Forcing them to stop in their tracks helps Cole control the pace of the match, and it's just nice to see him do something genuinely effective. If the opponent gets fed up and tries to jump over the grenades, Lightning Hook will force them into a hard knockdown state, and this is Cole's most damaging anti-air. If it whiffs you to a bad read, Cole will eat a full combo, so it's best to use the move as a reactionary tool. Lightning Hook doesn't do a lot of damage, but repeated use of the attack will condition the opponent to stay grounded, which opens them up to more grenades. A strategy I like to use is to throw a medium grenade for Oki and then force the enemy to block a high-low mix-up. If they roll forward to escape the setup, you'll be in range to punish, and as they're in a hard knockdown state, quick rising is impossible. It's also easy to use Lightning Hook as a combo ender after a switch cancel, and this will never get old. It's super satisfying to do. Finally, Shockwave is a close range strike that knocks the enemy away, allowing Cole to set up his zoning game. The move also destroys projectiles and leads to a wall bounce with meter, so it does provide meaningful resolutions to combos. The downsides are that it has slow startup, recovery, and is unsafe on block, so you'd only want to use this in combos. As Shockwave leads to Cole's super, it can be charged and dash cancelled, but with how much startup the move has when used this way, I wouldn't recommend it in neutral. Finally, Cole's super, Ionic Vortex, traps the enemy inside of what's supposed to be an electric tornado. If performed from up close, a cinematic ending in a hard knockdown will play out, with the non-cinematic version acting as a beefed up projectile. An effective way you can use the super is to place the enemy into a hard knockdown, tag into Cole, and then throw out a charged up Ionic Vortex as Oki. If they block it, you'll be safely at a distance, but if they jump, it's a Lightning Hook time. The most prominent downside to the super is its range, as you can't use it by itself from a distance to threaten the enemy. This limits its use to close range situations, but even this isn't too bad. Overall, Cole's normals and some of his specials are lackluster, and they fail to properly threaten the enemy from most attack ranges, but Lightning Hook and Shock Grenade aren't that bad and they should be used very often. The way I see it, Cole seems best as a long-range type of guy, as although he isn't strictly a zoner, his normals and whiff punishment tools aren't effective enough for him to want to occupy this space, and his slow startup speed makes it suicide for him to be right up close. Throwing grenades from a distance to annoy the enemy is where he thrives, and he has all the tools he needs to punish them if they make a rash decision. Originally, my plan was to separate strengths and weaknesses into parts, but after messing around with him in the lab, I soon realized that Cole literally doesn't have enough strengths to warrant giving the topic its own section. As previously established, he doesn't have much going for him in terms of clear and definable advantages, as if there's something he can do, another character will be able to do it better. Whether it's zoning, whiff punishment, hit confirms, etc., he's always playing second fiddle. With that being said, there's still some information that I haven't mentioned yet, so unfortunately, it gets even worse for our electric friend. As Cole is still a regular guy at the end of the day, his mobility reflects this, as it's not that special. His forward movement is solid, with his walk being decent and his dash being great. It covers considerable distance in a short amount of time, and it can help him confront enemies who prefer to stay away and zone. If you plan on incorporating an aggressive style of play into your strategy with Cole, make frequent use of this technique. On the other hand, his backwards movement is extremely sluggish, making it feel like Cole is underwater. His backdash is the best example, as it doesn't go very far and has noticeable recovery, and despite possessing some invincibility frames, it can be punished if timed correctly. Going back a bit, remember how I mentioned that Cole was best when far away? What's ironic is that due to his sucky backwards movement, it's quite difficult for Cole to move to this position in the first place. There's simply no chance for him to outrun the game's popular characters with his lacking movement options, so he's gonna get rushed down quite easily. If you try to switch things up and jump away, you'll find that Cole's jumps are bang on average. As far as I can tell, they're the most average jumps I've ever seen in any fighting game, as there's nothing about them that stands out, for better or for worse. They're not too floaty, not too high, not too fast, and not too slow, so despite being kind of bland and plain, they'll get the job done. If you were hoping that things would get better from this point on, I'm so sorry to disappoint, because we've now moved on to Cole's health values. If you're like me, then you would have looked at Cole and said, yeah, he looks like a burly kind of guy who has glassed someone in a bar fight before, surely he has plenty of fighting spirit. I mean, you can literally shoot lightning out of your fingertips, Cole, so don't worry about a mere grizzly bear. In a game where the average character has around 1000 health, Cole only has 750. This means that Cole has less health than Akuma, Kami, Xiaoyu, etc., and I don't know about you, but this makes no sense to me. Cole McGrath, the infamous superhero who survived an explosion that totaled an entire city, has the same amount of health as Kuro, a cat who spends his days going on family-friendly adventures. In other words, Cole has the second lowest health value in the entire game. It doesn't matter who he's fighting or where he is on the screen, because Cole will take big damage from most, if not all, combos and special moves. Akuma's most basic jump in B&B will take off 43% of Cole's health bar, and one Zangief B&B will take off 57%. Even the most basic of solo combos from any character will inflict meaningful damage onto his health bar, and it only gets worse when you start incorporating the tag systems. If Cole gets hit by a combo that ends with a super, it's lights out, especially if the combo uses a cross art. Unlike most tag team fighting games, Street Fighter X Tekken doesn't feature any DHC or assist mechanics, so with regards to team synergy, we have to take this into consideration when analysing Cole. From what I understand, Cole doesn't seem like much of a team player, as he seemingly lacks realistic ways to get his partner in outside of combos. Bringing them in after a lightning hook or a shockwave is encouraged due to their respective knockback, but when you're just moving around in neutral, it's considerably more challenging. To make matters worse, Cole doesn't have any attacks that keep the enemy in extended block stun outside of his wrecker, but you could only bring your character in after the final hit is blocked. I tried, Lord knows I tried, to bring Cole's friend in while the second or first hit was connecting, but this never happened despite my desperate efforts. Figuring out ways to safely tag in and force a mix-up is a key part of Street Fighter X Tekken's offensive meta, and Cole sadly doesn't have easy access to this strategy. He can tag in after Thunder Drop, but that's assuming the enemy doesn't avoid the startup. With all of that being said, I stumbled across a discussion on the old SRK forums that features theory-crafted ideas concerning potential Cole teams, and there are some actually really cool ideas here. Theoretically, Cole can be used to start combos, end combos, come in after safe on block strikes, and do whatever else you can think of. Taking all of this into consideration, I view Cole's team synergy as flawed, as despite having legitimate strategies that could happen in real matches, they're few and far between. As I mentioned in my Pandora video, this mechanic is mostly useless as it does nothing to help characters overcome their weaknesses, as well as immediately killing them if they don't win the entire match in 10 seconds. Unfortunately, this 100% applies to Cole, as if you activate Pandora with this character, you've already lost. Because the timer is constantly ticking down, Cole is forced to immediately go on the offense, and even with Pandora's damage buff, his buttons are still too slow to be deadly. Even if he does somehow land a big hit and score a full combo, Cole's animations can go on for quite some time, and even the most basic of strings will dry up most of the Pandora timer. Different characters have different health values of course, but a general rule of thumb is that if the enemy has more than half their life, Cole most likely won't be able to defeat them in time. If he activates Pandora when far away, which is usually due to a misinput because I don't know why you would ever intentionally do this, then that's the game. The enemy can block low and eat throws all day, and as Cole's overhead doesn't have any follow-ups, he also can't use this to score quick and big damage, so he's kind of screwed in this situation. It's a shame that Cole kind of sucks in the gameplay department, because aesthetically he's awesome. His outfit, mannerisms, and demeanor feel super authentic to the infamous series, and he's even inspired me to go through the first two games again. It's been so long since I've played them, so I have to thank Street Fighter X Tekken for motivating me to relive some childhood nostalgia. Even after doing all this research and writing, I still can't believe that a crossover as wild as this ever took place, and it feels like something out of a Sony fanboy's fever dream. If it were up to me, I would make Cole stronger by giving his buttons faster startup and slightly more damage, as I feel this will help him keep up with the more dominant characters, as well as making his inclusion less of a letdown for those unfamiliar with his source material. If Street Fighter X Tekken was your first exposure to Cole, then I don't blame you for potentially thinking that he was a bit lame. In a game where characters have all sorts of crazy powers, appearances, and archetypes, whacking the enemy with a blunt object and throwing out energy balls isn't the most interesting application of his abilities, with this being my overall biggest disappointment. There are so many ways that Capcom could have made him a more unorthodox fighter with unique attacks that no other character possesses, but look, it's fine, I still love his inclusion overall. It's awesome to see a Western-developed character in a Japanese fighting game, especially one that represents a bygone era of video games. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.